Hello, today we are going to be talking about neck strength, waking up early in the morning, conditioning, and what was the other thing? Training in the morning. Welcome to episode 12 of Run It Straight. Chris, do I normally say hello? I can't even remember. Brain freeze. Oh, I didn't do the prep bit.
What do you mean?
Crap.
There's my intro. I didn't do the prep bit.
Shut up. All right, our first question is a two-parter. Today we have two questions, but each of them have two parts, so it's kind of like four questions. So let's get stuck in. First question comes via Instagram Anonymous. I've heard you tell people to get up early and train before school, but I have two questions about that. Firstly, I struggle to wake up in the morning, so what can I do to wake up and get up and train? Secondly, what kind of training should I do in the morning? So let's talk first about waking up.
Remember the reason why you need to wake up early, or the reason why you are training that you need to wake up early for, so get the motivation there. Read up on athletes that you aspire to be and look at their training schedules and what they do, what they did to get to that level, and I guarantee you a lot of them would have been training in the morning.
Yeah,
waking up early, working hard in the gym, not just waking up and getting to the gym, but actually working hard when you're in the gym as well, and maybe listening to some podcasts or some motivational videos off YouTube or so forth, and finally put an alarm on. Go to bed early enough that you're getting enough sleep. Put an alarm on. Don't put 50 alarms on. Just get up after the first one. It's the best way to wake up. I'm sure there's a motivational video that we can add a link to.
Yeah.
That actually explains the reason why it's best to get up on the first alarm.
Okay, like with what Chris said, you've got to clarify in your mind why you're doing it and why it's important, and you've got to buy into it. Okay, I've decided that I definitely need to do this. Next step, allow enough time for sleep. You can't just, I'm going to get up tomorrow morning at 5 and I'm going to train, and then you go to bed at 10:30 or at 11 like you do every single night, and then you wonder why you're exhausted and you can't wake up in the morning. It's not going to work. So you need to allow enough sleep. Now, that means somewhere between sort of 7 and 9 hours. This is what's optimal for a human. Some people can get by on 7, some people need 8 or 9. What I would say is if you're doing a lot of training, you're probably going to go more towards the 8 and the 9 hours, not so much towards the 7. It's the same with most of the guys that are watching this. If you're somewhere between, 12 and 16, 17, 18, you're going to be needing more sleep.
Can I touch on the sleep again?
Yeah.
Don't underestimate the quality of sleep as well, or the importance of sleep with training, especially early in the morning. If you don't get enough sleep and you try to train hard in the morning, you will see the drop off in weight if you're not getting enough sleep.
Yep.
You'll overload your body. It could lead to injuries and so forth. So it's actually very important that you get enough sleep.
Yeah, it's not one of those things you can just grind out.
Yeah.
I know there's some popular speeches on there about, there's one with Arnie when he's talking about, just sleep faster. But in reality, when you actually talk to, high performance coaches and business coaches and these kinds of people, they'll still get up at that, early in the morning. It could be 5 a.m. or 4 a.m., but they just go to bed earlier at nighttime, because usually at nighttime you're just wasting time. You're going to be farting around on your phone or watching something useless on Netflix anyway, so just go to bed earlier. If it's important to you, you'll do it. Next, regular nighttime routine. Go to bed at the same time every night. Try to wake up at the same time. Just because it's a Friday night doesn't mean you can stay up 2 or 3 hours later and sleep in. The body doesn't like that. You are going to be tired. You are going to be fatigued. Try to go to bed at the same time every night regardless. Try to wake up at the same time. Even if you have a little bit of a later night on like a Friday, let's say it's a Saturday night, and instead of going to bed at 10:30, you stay up until 12:30 or 1 or something like that. By sleeping in, you're not catching up. That sleep is gone. You've lost it. It's destroyed. The time you can't get back. Wake up at the same time, so your circadian rhythms will regulate at that same time. And Saturday, Sunday morning, once your body's in a routine, it's going to stick to it. And this is the hardest thing, particularly with a lot of you guys, which you asked, is how do I wake up in the morning? You've got to get it into a routine, and then when it's in a routine, stick with that routine. If you're tired during the day and on the weekend, just lie down, have a bit of a nap, that's fine. but you've got to get yourself into a routine, which means allowing 7 to 9 hours. It means going to bed at roughly the same time each night. It means waking up at the same time. Like Chris said, set an alarm. When your alarm goes off in the morning, get up straight away. Don't hit snooze. So this is one of the big, really bugs us. Do not have, if you need to be up at, say, 6, don't have an alarm at 5:45 and then 5:50 and then 5:53 and then 5:56. Oh, I'll just snooze, I'll just snooze, I'll just snooze. Set one alarm, set it at 6 a.m, it goes off and you get up. Simple, don't set multiple alarms. As soon as you wake up, expose yourself to light immediately. It's going to change what's going on in your body hormonally. You're going to actually start to wake up. You're not just going to be, awake and tired and absolutely shattered. Light will help wake you up. If you are really struggling with that, speaking of phones, if you are really struggling with the alarm, so there's a couple of boys who not mentioning any names, Khaled, who are struggling to get up in the morning. There's alarm clocks that you can buy online. They're called light emitting. So again, let's go back and say you want to wake up at 6 a.m. What this thing will do is, as well as making sound noise, you can select the options for what you want. It might be like a little triangle or a little round thing that'll sit, on your bedside table. And if you say you want to be awake at 6, and you can adjust all of this within the device itself, at say 5:45 in the morning, it's going to start to emit a really, really low level of light, which will get stronger over the course of 15 minutes in this case, or whatever it is that you set it out for. And that light, when it hits the skin on your face, on your arms, the exposure to light will actually wake you up, and it'll wake you up properly. That's what humans are designed. We're designed to be exposed to light when the sunrise comes up and you wake up the same way. You might be lying in bed and you hear the birds start chirping. It's because they're exposed to the light, they're all waking up. This performs the same function, and we have a lot of clients, whether they're footy guys or they're just training clients who've got to get up early to come into the gym. We get these light emitting alarm clocks and they never have any issues. It always wakes them up. They're surprised how well they feel having woken up from that. We have a question behind the camera. Lumi. Okay, there you go. That's one of the brands is Lumi. Is that a round one or is that one of the triangular pyramid shaped ones? A round one, there you go. That's one of the round ones. Lumi. Going to sleep on time is often one of the areas that you guys struggle with. So in the 1 to 2 hours before bed, no phone, no tablet, get rid of the TV for at least an hour before bed. Try and read one of those things that's made from trees and paper. It's called a book. Try and do that. Maybe get on the floor, do some stretching. That actually relaxes the nervous system. Do something other than staring at a screen. Blue light emitting devices like these things, like phones, again, they will down-regulate the sleeping hormone, making it harder for you to get off to sleep. Now, in saying this, if you want to go to bed at, say, 10:30 and you want to wake up at 6, if you normally go to bed at 12, don't think that lying in bed at 10:30, yep, tonight I'm going to go to bed at 10:30, and you lie there and you're wide awake and this doesn't work, and you try it for 3 days. Of course it's not going to work, because your circadian rhythms are used to going to bed at 12 or 12:30. You've got to gradually, if your normal bedtime is I'm in bed by like 11:30 and I'm usually off by 11:45, just bring about 15 minutes and try that for 2 or 3 days. And if you want to make yourself a little bit more tireder, still set your alarm so that you wake up early. Maybe you don't get your 7, maybe you only get 5 hours sleep. Set that alarm, and I guarantee you that next day, by the end of the day, you're going to be buggered because you got up early. So going to bed at 10:30 is going to be a lot easier. Okay, so don't just think, oh yeah, I'm going to white knuckle it through and just grind my way. Set up these processes and plan. Yes? What else?
Smarter, not harder.
Yeah, that's right. I actually think we've covered most of that in regards to waking up in the morning.
I just want to touch on stretching and how much of a good idea it actually is to stretch right before you sleep.
Yep.
Most of the time stretching gets neglected. I know that's not part of the question, but stretching does get neglected. That's a perfect time to do it because it does help relax your body and you can fall into a deeper sleep. So make sure you get it done. And no blue light 1 hour before you sleep.
Yeah, and it becomes a routine, which with most of you guys, almost every single boy who comes and works in the program, and if you're out doing your own thing, sort of taking the advice, training in a gym, doing your field work and everything, flexibility is always going to be an issue. We see boys with sore knees, and it's just because they're tight and they're not flexibility. Hips, again, the glutes could be a problem.
Because they're so active.
Yeah, because you are so active, because we're asking you to do a lot of work. So if you don't do the stretching, you're going to end up getting injuries. This is a good way to build it in your routine, because oftentimes, I forgot. Well, this way you're not going to forget. If it could just be the 20 minutes, the half hour or an hour, or whatever it is before you go to bed, stretch, then go to sleep. Now, the second part of the question, what type of training to do in the morning? That's a pretty subjective question. it really just depends on what needs doing. So are we looking at, is it strength training? Is it skill work? Is it flexibility, mobility, soft tissue work? Is it fitness, conditioning? Is it speed and acceleration? So I can't give you a what should you do in the morning. It depends on it depends on where you are with your training and what you need to be doing. What's your development level like as a rugby league player? Are you at the point where you're pretty good skillfully, but you're just a little bit small? Maybe you need to be getting into the gym early and lifting. Like we just talked about. Maybe it's the flexibility and the mobility side. Maybe you're always pulling up sore. You've got little niggles, little pulls that are happening just because you're too tight. Your joints hurt. When you try to lift, you can't get through full range of motion. So maybe it's flexibility and mobility. Maybe you're on the field and you're gassed after 10 minutes and you need to be doing some conditioning work in the morning. Wherever you happen to be, what area needs the most work? Also look at how much time do you have and what equipment do you have access to. So, we have some boys and they say, oh, I haven't got time to train in the morning. It's like, okay, well, what time do you wake up? And they'll say 7:30. Like, okay, well, what time do you leave for school? 8:30. So someone like that, you got plenty of time to get up in the morning. Wake up at 6, that gives you an hour and a half. And if it takes you an hour to somehow I don't understand why it takes a 15-year-old boy an hour to just simply have something to eat, maybe have a quick shower, get dressed. But let's say that it does. If you wake up at 6, you've got an hour and a half to train. If you wake up at, say, 5:30, you can maybe get to a gym. You could lift for an hour and a bit. You can get home, have your shower, eat, get dressed, and you can go. So maybe don't make so many excuses and get to it. If you don't have as much time, maybe it is just a short, hard conditioning session, or maybe it's some flexibility and mobility work. There's always a way to find some time there. Yes?
At the end of the day, it comes down to motivation.
Yep.
And making up excuses.
Yeah, and look, there could be little things. Maybe in the morning you wake up, and that's when you do some core stuff, and maybe you do some glute activation. Maybe you've got some glute firing patterns issues, and that's when you do that. Maybe on a Monday morning, you might wake up if you've played footy on the Sunday before, because obviously it's in season at the moment. Maybe you wake up and you just go through some flexibility, some foam rolling, some trigger point release using, like a golf ball or a massage ball or something like that. Maybe Tuesday morning you do some fitness, or maybe it's a speed session or something. There's so many different things. Again, it depends on the level that you're at, the amount of time and the access to equipment that you do have.
Just touching on that, if you're training in the morning, let's say you've got a bit of strength or power exercises that you need to do throughout the day, it's always best to do them at the start when you're fresh, when your nervous system is fresh.
Yep.
So it's no good doing that after, you play a game of footy at school, then you come into the gym after it and you want to do some strength and power training.
Yeah, it's surprising how often we have guys come in with our afternoon program, and they've gotten up at 7:30 or whatever it is, and then they go and they play basketball for 20 minutes before the first bell at school, and then at recess they're out playing basketball, and then they've got PE, and then at lunch they're out playing basketball again, and then they have school sport, and then they come in here at 4:15 and they're like, why am I weak today? And it's like, well, because everything is fried and you probably haven't eaten enough food and a whole bunch of other bits and pieces. And then on the odd occasion, maybe it's a school holidays or whatever, they come in the morning and they can't believe how strong they are. So
it's very noticeable.
Yeah, it really is. All things being equal, I prefer you to get sort of strength, speed, power stuff in the morning, if that's doable in your particular situation. Next question. Comes again via Instagram, and it is another two-parter. Thoughts on neck strength, and do you have any tips for conditioning? Neck strength, Chris?
Yep, I will touch on that about neck strength. I'll talk more about posture. So when you say neck strength, if you don't have the correct posture, your neck will be under more strain. Mm-hmm. Muscles will be tight. It might feel weak, but it could just be tight and under a lot of pressure, if that makes sense. So first thing would be to fix your posture, strengthen your stabilizing muscles to take tension off areas like your neck, and make sure it's nice and loose and free before you train.
Yep. Now, when we look at neck strengthening training for rugby league players, we're looking more at stability. You see sometimes when someone gets hit and the head can bobble around, particularly they come down, they get slammed on the ground, it falls back and it gets hit. There's a secondary shock when it hits the ground. You want to train stability, because you can get hit from the front, from the side, from the back, regardless of whether it's attack or defense. You want to train stability more than movement through the 4 different movement patterns. So that's flexion, which is your head coming forward, it's extension, your head going back, and it's lateral movement or lateral flexion to the side. So you want to look at something, it's really old school, which is simply just putting literally your hand against your head and pushing resistant wise. Now you might do it with your head, you might do it with your hand, you might do it against the wall, use a towel. With a partner it does work well because as you get stronger they can increase more tension. But through all 4 directions holding, we do have some devices in the gym that for some of the more advanced guys, when we're working on this, we can actually put a harness on and put moderate loads on, and they push out against that and they just try and hold their head in a nice steady position while keeping it straight. Look, neck strengthening, it is important, but it's not as important as it used to be because scrummaging is a joke these days in rugby league. Not like union where, you have a look at their front rowers and even to an extent the second rowers, and they need to have these thick set necks because they need to protect themselves. In league, it's just a chance to get together and have a bit of a cuddle. Bit of a breather until, I'd like to see them either go back to putting the ball in and making it a contest or get rid of it altogether, but we'll see. They're not exactly usually quick on following through on these things. Like I said, you can do it with a partner, you can use a towel, you can use your own hand, harness if you have access to a machine, train the 4 movement patterns, train to hold, not necessarily to move through like, where did I see it recently? Creed 2. Where he's training out in the desert and he's, he's got the strap. So the strap is not necessarily such a bad idea. We just prefer to put it to a cable behind you and increase the tension so that when you push out and the weight's up, you're just simply holding that posture rather than, doing head banging reps as though you were into metal. Second part of the question, conditioning. There's no magic pill. You have to do the work. Conditioning or your level of fitness is probably the easiest thing to improve, particularly if you're untrained, because anything's going to work really well at the start. And cardiovascular fitness it's one of the quickest qualities that you can develop if you put the work in, and it's one of the quickest and easiest ways to get an edge up on the guys that are around you and to allow you to make, probably one of the biggest things of this is you can make better decisions when you're out on the field. And if you remember the last episode we had Now on, and he was talking about effort on effort, which is when you do one thing, you do something good in a game. If you're fit enough, you'll be then able to follow up and do another thing and then maybe a third and just follow and keep. And that's when you get momentum. That's when you play well. That's when other people notice, oh, look at this big difference. It's like the number one quickest way that I would see if you had a kid to make him improve even in, say, a month is just to get fit. You make better decisions on the field. You better technique with your tackling. You can hang around the ball more. You can push up. Like we said, you can make effort on effort. So just start putting some work in, any work. Keep in mind volume and intensity. So what that might mean is that if you're going to go for a 5K or an 8K run at a certain intensity, that's going to be very different to if you're doing like suicides or if you're doing hundreds. You can't, like, I don't know, if you go for, let's say you go for a jog for 5Ks and you run 30 or 40 minutes and you're pretty buggered by the end of it. You're probably not going to be able to do 30 or 40 minutes of sprints if you're going to go and do hundreds. It's only going to be maybe, 15, 20 minutes, just because the intensity is a lot higher. In saying that, let's say you're doing no conditioning, okay, this person who's asked the question, he hasn't included any more details. I would start off with jogging. Why? Because I see so many guys who go out to do a whole lot of, intense fitness work and they pull muscles. Very rarely will anyone pull muscles if they go out and jogging. I would say go out and jog on grass, get 3 or 4 weeks in to get a little bit of a base. Then we'll start to put in some longer interval work where we're doing some higher pace and some higher tempo work. Thoughts?
Plenty of thoughts. One thing is don't go too hard too soon.
Yeah.
As Joe mentioned. But besides the, what was it that you said?
You mean the difference in intensity between, like, if you're going for a 5 or a 6K jog or doing the intervals?
Yes. So besides that, the amount that you're doing in one session, if you do too much, you probably won't be able to walk for a week after.
Yeah.
It's very easy to push through it on the one session. If you're mentally tough, you can push through it on that single session or that first session that you do, but you might actually turn yourself off it completely because the next day you wake up and you can't move anything.
Yeah, you can't.
Find stomach muscles that you never thought you had before from all the running. So yeah, don't do that.
Also, secondly to that, if you just start running heaps, you will. We've seen this with so many of the guys who come into the program. They get super pumped. We give them a program to follow for, say, 3 to 6 weeks, slowly increasing the distances that they're running. There's a mix of long, slow work and of interval work and of tempo running. and they go out and they triple the distance, and then 2 weeks in they're loving it. Oh yeah, look, the body fat's coming on. I'm so fit, I can run all day. A month later, oh Joe, my shins hurt. And then when we ask them, well, are you following the program? Oh no, I'm actually doing extra here and extra there. If you increase the volume of work too quickly, not only are you going to be really sore the next day, but you're going to end up developing overuse injuries and problems. Don't increase the volume of work too quickly. I would say even particularly so. If you're a forward, if you're carrying a bit of extra weight, be very, very careful. That's why I did say before to make sure that you're running on grass to lower the impact, but you need to gradually increase. And when we say gradually, we're talking about, let's say that you're doing 5Ks worth or 6Ks worth of conditioning, maybe 2 or 3 of it is slow, steady, and the other is at a fast pace, interval work, hundreds, suicides, whatever it is. Don't increase the volume by more than 10% per week. Okay, 10% per week. If you're doing more than that, then you are running a risk of getting some overuse injuries. As far as how hard to use is a bit of a scale for our long, slow stuff. We get all the boys to download an app called Map My Run and use that because they're taking their phones with them anyway, listening to music. Download the app. You might look for, let's say you've been training on a Tuesday and a Thursday, and you've got a game on a Sunday. And so most clubs, they do conditioning on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then you do more ball work on a Thursday, and then you've got your game on a Sunday. So maybe start by getting an extra conditioning session in, maybe just an easy jog on grass once a week for 2-3 weeks, 4 to 5Ks, and run at a pace of, use the app because it'll tell you every kilometre, it tells you how fast you're running. Run at a pace of 6 minutes a kilometre. And just start and just say, okay, how do you feel? Scale of 1 to 10. And then build from there. Any other?
Make sure you are increasing the intensity though. It is only 10% a week.
Yep.
But make sure that the intensity does go up because you don't want to stick to the same things for cardio because it's quite hard to improve like that. But also, if you are getting those overuse injuries, maybe start to use more of the interval training effect rather than the long distance running at a slower pace.
Yeah, some boys will do that because it's easier. It's a lot easier, well, not that it's easy, but it's a lot easier to go and run 6Ks at a nice consistent pace running along with your music than it is to push yourself for 20, 30 minutes at a very hard pace where you often get close, you get nauseous, you get close to vomiting. Which is why you need to be doing a mix of both. And I know we've jumped around a little bit, but we haven't really got a whole lot of details sort of where to start. So start where you're at. Like I said, if you're doing nothing at the moment, add in a 3 or a 4 or a 5K slow, steady state to start with for about 3 weeks, and then maybe look to start to bring in things like 20s, 40s, 50s, 100s, suicides, coat hangers, those kinds of things in a separate.
The things I like about that, the interval type of training, is besides the advantages of conditioning, it also creates mental toughness and it mimics game situations a bit more. Because at times you would need to increase the intensity. You go 100% and then you back off. So I do recommend that.
I think that's pretty much it for today. All right, guys, if you do have any other questions, please send them in via Instagram. If you don't want us to put your name, say anonymous, which is what most of the guys do anyway. Please make sure to follow us on, where are they following us on? Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Share it, tell your friends and your family and everything else like that about it. We really do appreciate it. Hopefully we are providing some value to you guys. And thank you very much. See you next time.